Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted today, August 5th, to share this platform with Angela Tiki from Greece and Arielle Guttman from Greece, United States. We met earlier in July in Greece as I was visiting, and you know how astrology conversations start and keep going. And we discussed the Grand Cross at a restaurant, a Cretan restaurant. And it became, quite obvious that we have a lot to share and would like to share this with everyone because it is such a potent, relevant, and powerful configurations, alignment that understanding it better will help us better navigate those energies. So we're going to talk about global trends, what's happening in the world, and of course, how to apply this personally. Ultimately, it's about our lives. So if you have sensitive degrees around, the middle mutable signs, this will be particularly relevant for you. And as Angela will be mentioning, there's another Grand Cross happening also in fixed signs with the new moon in Leo at the end of Leo. So let's look at that for a moment. This is the mutable Grand Cross that we're talking about. It's going to be almost exact, in the middle of August. Mars, Jupiter coming together, the moon that day will be exactly opposing. And the moon is in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. So it's really a lot of, repetition of the same energies. And then Jupiter, Saturn square. It's what we call a first quarter square. We're going to touch on that. And Venus is starting to move into those degrees. So she's not quite there on the 16 degrees, but as you'll see, she's moving fast. Now, what's also very important is that Mars and Venus are involved in the cross, and they are the rulers of the nodes. So South Node in Libra, North Node in Aries, and Mars, Venus being the players here. So this is the other chart for a few days after, with the full moon in Leo Aquarius, around 27 degrees, exactly square Uranus, modern ruler of Aquarius. And then the asteroid Pallas. And Angela has done tremendous research on Pallas. So we look forward to hearing, what her analysis is about. And you notice that that very day, as we have the fixed Grand Cross, then Venus in Virgo is exacting its opposition to Saturn and square to Jupiter at 17. So that in itself becomes critical. It is also I would say, the day before or the exact day where we have a Mercury Sun Cazimi. So we are in the Mercury retrograde peak with the Sun Mercury together. And Mercury is very strong here, not only because it's Cazimi, but it rules Gemini Virgo in the cross. So a lot is going on, a very important, active, and perhaps volatile month. And we will unpack, all of us. Each one will provide a different perspective. Arielle is going to speak about the Venus star point, which is her extensive research and how that fits into this picture. Now, before we dive into this, I just want to share some updates on my side of the work. If you would like to learn more about this type of astrology, you can join my YouTube channel. And there's particularly a video there that you may find interesting related to our topic. And that's a whole video on the meanings of cardinal, fixed, and mutable. There's also a Facebook group, Evolutionary Skies, that you can join with a lot of discussions. And we continue to unpack these dynamics, look at all the charts, and share many insights. I would like to also bring to your attention that I will be leading a panel in October 5th, about it's part 2 of the elections. So we're going to speak about the climate of the elections, the candidate, now that we have, you know, the final, possibly the final nominees, and the vice presidents. You know, Kamala is eminently will share who her running mate is. So we will have all the charts, and we will continue our analysis. That part 1 was in January. And those of you who were part of that panel remember how 2 of the panelists mentioned that Biden will not be the nominee. So it's wonderful how astrology can really help us understand those cycles. September, I'm going to lead a journey to Africa. And this is one of the most extraordinary events. I've always looked forward to going back to South Africa, to the White Lion. So you can fill your application if you're interested, and look, of course, at all the details of the journey. And another event in September, I'm going to be part of a conference in Italy, Lake Como. And I'm going to be also in the UK at the end of August at the Astrology Association conference. So, a lot going on. We're very busy astrologers, and we hope that these insights, these expertise, you know, helps, because it's all about being helpful. Today we speak about the mutable cross, and you know, crosses are relatively rare. They do often happen with the moon, because the moon is the fast moving agent. So having a cross quite often involves the moon. And this time we speak about alignment in all the mutable signs. The first cross is already in the making with Mars, Jupiter, and Gemini. So what are the mutable signs about? You know, the mutable signs are about integration. They're about how each individual is part of a larger whole. So people who have strong mutable energies in their chart are people who think more holistically. And if they don't, then they learn to. It's about a more global approach. It's about understanding that everything happens simultaneously. This is why mutable signs are very good at multitasking, because they understand that life bridges so many different dots. So one thing is connected to another thing that's connected to a third thing, and we create a whole web of interconnected energies. That's part of the mutable energy. So that's why I say it's beyond borders, and it spreads easily. The good and the bad. You know, good things can spread fast, and difficult things can spread fast. Remember, the pandemic broke out globally in March 2020, when we were in the sign of Pisces. There were a lot of energies in Pisces. So that's, you know, dissolves borders. So whatever we're talking about today, think about the fact that it's immediately leading to this sense of interdependence, interconnection. And on a positive level, this can mean that people can work together, that there can be um, cooperation, global understanding. But if it doesn't work well, then it creates noise, a lot of noise and shouting matches. Because the mutable signs are also about how we understand life, our philosophies, our belief systems, our education. If we speak of Gemini Sagittarius, we speak about mind. If we speak about Virgo Pisces, we speak about service, work. So the mutable cross brings education and employment. How what we learn, Gemini Sag, can be applied to what we do, Virgo Pisces. And so there's a lot of issues around international dynamics, philosophies, religion, my religion, your religion, ethnicities, culture in general, for better and worse. Now, we already see that there are a lot of ideological battles starting with misinformation. So ideological battle, fierce charge about the Olympics and how the gender issue, our transgender, allowed to compete with women, etc. So we see that it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about how attached we are to our beliefs. And with Mars, how it can get defensive. So mutable energy brings a lot of ideas. And like I said, on the positive level, it can also bring greater understanding. Weather patterns. Gemini is strongly, it's an air sign related to winds, but also related to transportation. Pisces is water. We know that a hurricane is pounding Florida as we speak. So this is a time where there could be weather patterns that are extreme, and I'm going to show you why. Going back, in 2016, we also had a very strong mutable cross. Neptune was on the north node, Jupiter was on the south node, Saturn was squaring. So not only was there also a mutable cross, but it also involved a square between Saturn and Jupiter, and it also involved Mars. So that was a last closing square before they conjunct Saturn, Jupiter. And now we're going to have an opening square. Issues that were at the time happening was the flooding immigration of Syrian refugees to Greece and Europe. So again, ethnic issues, international issues, bridging of cultures, those who were supportive of that, those who were cautious and defensive about allowing so many refugee come into Europe. So there were a lot of ideological battles around these geographical changes. And then there was a lot of happening with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton campaign. So we're again on this campaign with Donald Trump and how much intensity as far as information, as far as, their, I noted here the email probe around Hillary, and then the videos released about Donald Trump's sexual salacious, comments. And and so we can see with Gemini a lot of information, and about Sagittarius, things getting out of control, big, broadcasted, making something small bigger than it should be. And the term fake news around that time really brought scrutiny around who is sharing the information. Sagittarius, Saturn was in Sagittarius, which has to do with broadcasting and the reliability, how reliable the news are. So the need for more scrutiny. On a positive note, space travel, Juno reaching Jupiter. And so Jupiter was on the North Node, indeed. And there was also a coup in Turkey around that time. So again, ideological issues. That time, Mars was retrograde, back and forth in Sagittarius. So I'm going to go quickly, covering some of these cycles. We're talking about, first of all, Jupiter Mars coming together, going back to this chart. Jupiter Mars are conjunct. And then I'm going to talk about the Saturn Jupiter cycle in particular, and touch on Venus, because today we just heard the stock market is really shaky and Venus has to do with finances. So Jupiter Mars energy, looking back, we had it every 2 years because Mars is a 2-year cycle. So in March 2020, that's when the pandemic blew up, was 22 Capricorn. May 2022, it was at 3 Aries. And then now it's in Gemini. So, Jupiter, Mars, when people are born with that, or when it's happening in the sky, it's an extremely strong will. It's fiery energy, an unstoppable force. Having Jupiter and Mars can be very adventurous, very bold, like a fearless energy, but it can also get manic, and it can also be bulldozing. It's huge energy that it's hard to contain because there's so much emotion and so much identification, ideological identification. And so on the positive note, if we speak about ourselves, it can be a time where you're going to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to join Maurice's journey. But on the other hand, it can also mean that you are going to get into debates, argue about critical issues or about overblown issue. So one of the things to pay attention to is really choose your battles. It can easily get out of hand. And we're not just talking about Facebook arguments. This can easily escalate to larger dynamics where there are ideological wars, religious wars. And I'm saying wars in quotation marks, but expect a lot of people to take sides, to defend their point of views, and to be very emotional about the issues that are coming up to surface. One of the things we all need to pay attention to with this Jupiter, Mars, and the moon in Sag is misinformation. It is spreading wrong rumors. So our homework is to fact check ourselves, whatever we say, however important we feel it is, because it's flammable. And like I said, the mutable energy travels fast. So you say one wrong thing and it's already all over the world. It goes viral. And now some of the people born with Jupiter Mars, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who is a notorious hard, right-wing ex-leaders in France, who is known for his very racist views. John F. Kennedy, Amelia Earhart, who was the first woman, to fly over the Atlantic. And so the adventurous nature, she had a Mars Jupiter in Virgo. Liz Cheney, who is very vocal about, the state of the Republican Party in the United States. So these people are usually very vocal, very adventurous, and very bold. Two assassinations occurred during Mars-Jupiter aspect. One was it struck Rabin in Israel in 95. And though it was not a conjunction, it was a mutual reception. Mars was at the time in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Aries. JFK, one of them was a mutual reception. I think the assassination of Rabin was Mars-Jupiter conjunct in Sag, and then JFK was the mutual reception. Anyway, strong, why is the risk of an assassination is because it has to do with ideological clashes. It has to do with, forcing your beliefs on somebody else. And so trying to neutralize people, you don't agree with. Now, looking at the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, we know the conjunction started in December 2020. So this is the starting point of the cycle we're in. We mentioned that the closing square was in 2016. So about every 4 years, we have a Jupiter-Saturn angular aspect, conjunction, square, opposition, square, conjunction, etc. every 4 years. So 2020 was the conjunction, which is the seeding point. And, we talked about it a lot, how that was a time of a new conjunction in air signs. And we know, how political, how intense 2020 was. But that was also the time of the insurgency in the United States. After Biden won the election, Trump refused to accept the results, leading to attacking, his supporters attacking the Capitol. So that was part of this Jupiter Saturn, and I'm going to explain why. Right now, we are at the square. So it's the first opening cycle. And so a lot of events around 2020, 2021 may echo into the current time and year. And of course, the US election is in itself, an echo of 2016, 2020, and 2024. Now, lo and behold, the candidates both are born with the Saturn Jupiter opening square. So they are leading their campaign during the opening square, and it basically focuses on their own natal energy. So what is Jupiter-Saturn about? Jupiter-Saturn are the teachers of our zodiac. They are the wise, the wisdom keepers, the teachers, the role models. So that also means they represent right from wrong, ethics, the rule of law, order, our sense of stability, our ability to rely on what we have, on what people are telling us. Is the system working or not? When we have a conjunction of Saturn Jupiter, there's usually a change of guard. Usually a leader changes. So in the United States, it was not a surprise that there was a new president coming, because Jupiter Saturn usually brings that. But you see the battle, when the conjunction occurred in 2020, there's a new leadership. But on the other hand, how the rule of law was questioned, and how suddenly things that we thought were reliable and accepting elections, were suddenly in doubt, and our sense of stability was not there anymore. So it definitely targets leaders, how credible they are. And, that's going to be a strong issue right now, especially when we speak about ethnic, racial, international, and transport. So how to best navigate, this grand cross, and this coming month with many activations. First of all, I would say be cautious, because this energy is huge. And there will be a tendency for this manic depressive, highs, euphoria, overconfidence, and then crash. It's false. You don't get what you want. You thought you believed in something, and then it's not true. So there's this hot, cold energy that's very, very strong. And that is the Saturn component that tries to harness, tame the Jupiter Mars, very expansive, manic energy. Be careful with travel, because it's all about motion, Gemini, by sea, by air, by road. And most importantly, something you definitely have control over is to measure your words, is to think before you speak, and is to fact check everything. So I'm going to pass the torch and the mic to my colleagues here. I just want to inspire you, if you feel called for studies, to check my website. And thank you. And may we be safe. Arielle, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you, Maurice. That was wonderful. I'm sure I'm going to be repeating some of the things you said, but we are talking about the same subject, so it's going to be rather difficult not to overlap on some of our themes, of course. So that was great. You said that Angela was monitoring the questions for you. Did you want to take them now, or are we going to take them all at the end?
Are there a question I see? Did you
There was
see
a question about Mars energy.
Okay. Mars energy, is it similar in the birth chart? It can be, definitely. When we speak about global dynamics, it can apply to, Mars Jupiter echoes Mars in Sagittarius. But I would say Mars Jupiter is even more amplified, because they are both really the ruler of that energy. So I would say it has more intensity to have the Mars Jupiter together. Thank you. So
All right.
Arielle, all
You
yours.
want me to share my screen? And here we are. So I'm going to take our little pictures out of the way. And hopefully this thing doesn't get in the way. Okay, so as Maurice said, we have a grand mutable cross. And it's grand for at least a couple of days, 1 or 2 days in there when the moon goes into Sagittarius. But there's also something else in Sagittarius right now, and that is called, there at 14 degrees Sagittarius, there is an area of the galaxy known as the Great Attractor. And it is something happening behind the scenes. I'm going to be talking a lot today about things that are happening behind the scenes, but are relevant to this cross, because behind the scenes, they're also influencing this cross. For instance, the Venus star point, which I think a lot of you know, I've been working with for, some 20 years now, and have done a fair amount of research on its manifestation in both personal charts and mundane charts, world events. And what the star point is doing right now, this whole year, is that it's actually focused at 14 Gemini since early June. So it's really adding to the emphasis, the complexity, and the nuance of this mutable cross. And again, emphasizing more of the Gemini side of it. Now, this is the first time that the Venus star point has been this close to the north node of Uranus. The north node of Uranus is a fairly fixed point. All of the planets have nodes, like the moon. We normally just talk about the moon's nodes, but all the planets have nodes. And Uranus is rather stationary for a long period of time at 14 degrees Gemini. In April, I was with Julia from the CIA, and we did a webinar together on the Venus star point this year, and we talked at great length about the influence of Uranus's north node and the Venus star point coming together. So that's an interesting discussion too, if you want to check that out later. So also in the helio system, there are helio nodes and there are geo nodes, but in the helio nodes, which tend to be fairly fixed, Venus's north node is also in Gemini at 16. So what that actually means is that Venus's north node and Uranus's north node are really traveling together, and have been in terms of their nodes for a very long time. So they are, they're a pair, which might give us a little bit of a different feeling about Venus and Uranus, and especially now that all this energy is on it and the Venus star point is on it, and we see a lot of manifestations of it in the world. So this is the chart of the event, which you have already seen, but I'm just going to point out that in the inner wheel is the mutable cross, the planets that we know and recognize: Venus, Saturn, the moon, and Mars and Jupiter. Now, there's several days in the middle of August where different planets are making their exact contact. So it really stretches for about 5 or 6 days. And if you look at orbs, it's going to be a week or two that we're going to be feeling the, serious impact of all of this. But here's the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, and there's Uranus's north node right on it. So I don't know if any of you have wondered. I was wondering myself. The last few weeks have been so over the top in terms of changes and so many things happening, especially as those of us that are looking at the election cycle. And, for a while there, for a month or two ago, Donald Trump was sitting in a courtroom facing, charges of multiple convictions on multiple charges that of different cases that have been pending for a long time. And then suddenly he was out of court. And then suddenly he's at a rally and suddenly he gets shot. and then suddenly he is anointed as a great one, almost as a Messiah figure for his MAGA group at his subsequent rallies, and feeling very, very high, very euphoric, very like, oh well, this is no contest situation. We've got this covered. We certainly aren't threatened by Biden running. And then suddenly Biden's not in the running and Harris is. What is so interesting about all of this is that, as Maurice mentioned, the winds of change blow quite heavily during mutable sign periods, mutable crosses. And so one day to the next, we can't make any conclusions. We can't come to anything final because it's going to change tomorrow. Just when you thought it was this way, the wind is blowing another way now. The hurricane's coming this way and suddenly the wind shifted. Now it's going that way. So, everything is changing. But this is a pretty incredible configuration here because, again, the Sagittarius part, the two nodes of Uranus, part of this cross, the great attractor here at 14 Sag, and the Venus star point this year at 14 Gemini. I'm finding the planetary nodes absolutely fascinating, and I'm definitely doing more work with them and getting very involved, and probably will have more to share in the future about it. Oh, by the way, the south node of Mercury happens to be in this cross as well. So more words, more messages. Also during this whole time period, I don't know if it was mentioned yet, but Mercury is retrograde for all of this time. So we know that when Mercury is retrograde, messages sometimes get tangled up, get misconstrued. They're not communicated correctly, or they're not heard or interpreted correctly. And so people have a tendency, especially with Mars in Gemini in this configuration, to jump to conclusions and react accordingly, when in fact it wasn't the case at all. What happened was not what happened. What they are reacting to is not what happened. So watch for a lot of this. The other thing is that when Mars and Uranus are close, the two nodes, Mars right now for the cross will be at 25 Gemini, the north node. But if you dial it back 10 days, 20 days, you'll find that Mars and Uranus's node were right together. So Mars and Uranus are volatile. There's all this change, all this action, the shooting, all this drama that has been going on, not just in the US, but also in the world. There's just a number of things happening right now. So we talk about the Venus star point just briefly. It's operating under the fifth harmonic, which is the circle divided by 5. There are always 5 arms of the Venus star in effect at any given time. And these arms are called the head, arms, and leg. These star points are called the head, the arms, and the legs. They all work together, and they're always synchronized in a particular relationship to each other. In other words, the star points move, the clock of the star moves sequentially, and so each of the star points have a relationship to one another throughout time as they repeat. And each period of time in history can be analyzed by the current 5 star points operating. So right now we have Gemini star at the head. The 2 arms are Leo that came before us, and Aries, which will come next. And then the 2 legs are Capricorn, which will come after Aries, and Scorpio Libra, which came before Leo. So that's how it works. Anyway, at any given time period, it's operating in the background behind the zodiac. We don't see it, but it is like a clock. It more or less gives us a time frame of whenever it's hitting current planetary configurations, either in your own chart are in the world chart. It's highlighting them. It's giving a lot of energy to them and bringing them into the foreground of the story. Now, what's interesting about the Gemini star point is that the US presidential election cycle is synced to the Gemini star point. The Gemini star point returns every 4 years. Every 4 years, it returns as either a morning star or an evening star. Right now, it's an evening star because there was not a retrograde. But in 2020, there was a retrograde Gemini star point, and so that was the morning star. But the US presidential election cycle is synced to the Gemini star point. And so it gives us a flavor too of what goes on with this long year of elections, especially in June, when it used to be a lot of the primaries by June, candidates were really decided. And of course, June is when the Gemini star point occurs every 4 years. But star points do change slowly over time. The Gemini star point is with us for 100 years. Before that, we had the Cancer star point as it moves clockwise. The media has so much to do with the election and who is the star at the moment, or who is getting all the attention. So the candidate's ability to really work with the media and handle the media and converse clearly through and with the media is a big part of it as well. Now, just to give you a sequence of events, we have so many different things happening here. This is that week, the week that will be, or we will look back on it at the week that was, So the first thing we have is a Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, 16 Gemini. Now, Maurice gave us several ideas about what Mars and Jupiter are all about, but I can't forget my teacher, one of my teachers in astrology, Jim Lewis, who trained me in working with astromapping, astrocartography. He did a lot of political research on planets and places and mundane charts. And he called Mars-Jupiter the Holy War, because where they fell together on the global map would be a spot where a religious war was taking place at the time. And furthermore, it was connected to US presidents' charts, so that while, for instance, one of the examples he used in the early 80s was that of Jimmy Carter, the president in the late 70s, who had his Mars-Jupiter lying right over Tehran, Iran. And so there was this whole thing, if you remember the history of the time, with the Taliban and the hostages and all of that. And then Reagan took over and the Iran-Contra affair. But Iran was in the news for a long time, and the Mars-Jupiter was there. So there are a few holy wars going on in the planet right now. And even if there aren't actual eruptions like riots and things going on, damage being done to either churches or mosques or synagogues or things like that, it's like it can easily, Mars and Jupiter can easily be like a wildfire raging out of control in record time. A spark can just be set off and it goes up in flames. This Mars in Gemini is going to bring us a little bit back to late 22 and early 23, when Mars was last in Gemini for a prolonged period during its retrograde cycle back then. So think about in your own personal life, maybe what was going on then for you, and see how this Mars return to that time period is affecting it. Kamala Harris has the square of Mars to Jupiter. She has Mars at 21 Leo and Jupiter at 24 Taurus. So she's, I think, sometimes the candidates of the current moment or people in the news in the current moment often have their own personal planets mirroring what's going on in the sky, the same type of configurations that are happening. So then we have the Mars-Saturn square from Gemini to Pisces. Mars and Saturn are two planets that are traditionally thought of as somewhat troublesome. They can bring aggression with Mars and suppression, followed by immediate suppression with Saturn. Traditional astrologers call them malefics. I don't like that term, but it is something that's been handed down to us in the tradition of astrology for, over 1,000 years. So we have to take a look at what are Mars and Saturn when they're squaring off with one another. Should we be worried? Is what's going on here? Now, again, Kamala has this opposition in her chart. She has Mars at 21 Leo, and she has Saturn at 27 Aquarius. So she's got two of these configurations happening. J.D. Vance has a conjunction widely in his chart, and RFK Jr. has the conjunction. I'm just talking about those are the candidates that have, had the most, gotten the most attention lately. And we have Venus Jupiter, and Venus Jupiter is in a square. I think two traditional planets, again, usually considered beneficial, bringing maybe a happy ending to some of the story that's at play here. I can't help but think that the presence of Venus and Jupiter and the Venus star point in this cross is going to bring us some happy news as well, some relief, some excitement, some feeling of, oh, that was a close call. Oh my goodness, thankfully we were saved by whatever. And I think that's, again, something that's just been happening recently with the present euphoric feeling of what's been happening with the Democratic Party and the candidate there. Venus Saturn is in an opposition, 17 Virgo to 17 Pisces. I would call that win some, lose some. Women and the control of women's issues, such as abortion, are coming under fire during this. Trump has this conjunction in his natal chart. And when it comes to enterprises and big money, he has definitely won some and lost some. He's lost very big on some, and he's also won on some. So it's Venus Saturn, it can go both ways. The conjunction, Vance has this in his chart also, but squared widely by sign. Then we have the big star of this month. I say that I think it's the big star of all of these because it's the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, which is a really big thing when it comes to politics and all of that. And so this is their first quarter square since their conjunction in late 2020 at 0 Aquarius. And, we can't forget that right after that conjunction was the Capitol insurrection. There was the certifying of the election that Biden was declared victorious. But since that time, it has never gone away. Trump and his followers have never forgotten what they call, election denial. We're talking about fake news. This has really been a big thing through the whole transit of Neptune through Pisces. And I think this fake news, or the way people interpret the news, has really kind of gone out of control with it too. But it was all about how the election was rigged and it was fake and all of that. And it hasn't stopped. That story has just been going on and on and on. Well, there's more about that. There's so much to say. I'm not going to be able to say it all, but I do feel Jupiter has more weight in these squares of this time. And this is only the first square of 3 that Jupiter and Saturn are going to have in this cycle. Why does Jupiter have more weight? For one thing, it's being pumped up by Mars right now. For another thing, Saturn's in Pisces, which is Jupiter's sign. So in some ways, Saturn is answering to Jupiter. And Saturn's not so strong in Pisces. So Jupiter might have the last word here again. Let's see. Donald Trump has the first quarter square of Jupiter and Saturn, and Kamala has the first quarter square of Jupiter and Saturn. So both presidential candidates have that square. The US also has a Jupiter-Saturn square. It's a third quarter square, but it is a square. And then finally we come to Venus and Mars. Now, normally Venus and Mars come together in any kind of aspect. We think, oh, that's wonderful. You know, that's maybe love is in the air. Maybe there's some kind of romance. Maybe there's some kind of, but it is a square. And we are getting a heightened dynamic right now between traditionally female signified by Venus and traditionally male signified by Mars. Tensions in the air. This is a square. There's a tension in the air about this male-female dynamic at the moment. We're seeing it in politics. We're seeing it at the Olympics. And in small outbursts all over the world. You may be seeing it in your personal life too. So then we have, as I was mentioning before, amplifying Gemini is this whole, you know, North Node Uranus and Venus in Gemini, and also the Venus star point. So this is the current Venus star point for anybody that wants to kind of take a look at this later. I'm not going to go through all this now. I've got way too much more to say, but this is just a recap on the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. Maurice talked about the 2016 one. I believe Angela is going to be talking about the 2016 one. It was in mutable, as this one is, Virgo to Sag. That was the third quarter square. This is the first quarter square, and it is Gemini to Pisces. But as you can see, the third of the 3 in this cycle will be in June of 2025. And where will it finally land? You know, what's the final outcome? It's going to look very different than what it looks now, because both signs will have changed. At least with the 2016 one, both signs stayed the same. With the 2024 one and to 2025, we have Jupiter changing signs into Cancer and Saturn changing signs into Aries. So that's where the outcome will be there. And that falls pretty darn close to the United States Jupiter and Venus conjunction that they have in early Cancer, the country has. And then we look 4 years from now to the next one, the opposition, Scorpio to Taurus. That I won't get into that now, but I'm sure that's going to have a lot to do with financial, the World Bank, world money, currency, economics, all of that, Taurus, Scorpio. But we'll get there later. So words, what we say, how we say it, who we say it to, why we say it. This is really about the power of communication in our own lives and what we're listening to other people say. Take a moment to kind of reflect. So these words, are they making us happy? Are they making us upset? You know, how much are we tuning in to what's being said right now? I don't think I have time to go into the charts, but I did provide the charts of Trump, Vance, and Harris, and also Kennedy, just with their star points. And I think the most notable thing about this is that Trump's star point, natal star point is 12 Aquarius, conjunct Ceres, opposite Pluto. So that's his, that's his star point. And Neptune's nodes, which mentioned previously, are at about 10 to 12, whether you're looking at Geo or Helio, Leo and Aquarius. And so he's on the Neptune nodal axis, his star point, his Ceres Pluto. And I think that is what has given him such an enormous following, a cult following. People actually believe him. And one of his star point legs up here is 5 Cancer. Mercury's right on it. So what comes out of his mouth, people love it or they hate it. And he's Gemini, so he can easily polarize people that way. And the mutable cross affects his own mutable planets. Vance aligns with Trump pretty closely. They, in a lot of different ways. He also has a Gemini. He has a Gemini star point. But his Venus, like Trump's, is in the 12th house and it squares Mars in Scorpio. So there's that Venus Mars again, that tension between the male-female dynamic. They're in alignment about their views of women. They both have 12th house Venuses. One is conjunct Saturn, the other one is square Mars. So there's a shadowy area about women, about race, immigration, gender, politics, abortion, especially women and women's issues. And so they are together on that. It's interesting that their candidate, the things that they really are aligned by and the things that they have really built a following, Trump has really built a following on, is vilifying women, race, immigration, gender politics. And isn't it funny that his opposition, his running opposition in the Democratic Party is a woman, is a Black woman, and is the daughter of immigrants. And so he's got all three wrapped into her to deal with. And I just think that's ironic in some ways. I think it's, how fate plays funny little tricks on us in terms of having to do that. I won't talk too much about Kennedy because, I think for the most part, he's not a serious threat to, he might have been before Kamala came in with Biden and Trump running, he might have taken a serious amount of votes away from the Democrats or the Republicans. It just depended, but we don't know now. The only thing about his chart that I would have to say is that his Jupiter is at 17 Gemini, and that is right in the middle of, this cross right now. So it's being, it's being highlighted. Whether favorably or not, we'll see. Jupiter in Gemini isn't always the most favorable place to have it if you look at traditional astrology when Jupiter is ruling its opposite sign, Sagittarius. So I think with Jupiter and Gemini, one has to be very careful about their words and how their words might actually lead to consequences. And I think that's a big theme right now with Jupiter and Gemini and Mars. Our words lead to consequences. Now, as far as Kamala's chart, back in 2019, when she was running for the 2020 presidential race, I singled her chart out at the time because I was doing some star point webinars then, and I thought, wow, this chart looks amazing in terms of the Venus star points. She was born with the Venus star point right on the ascendant, 28 Gemini, almost 28 and a half. Her north node and her ascendant are all there, all lined up. So there's a lot of potential there for growing into something amazing. She has a 6-pointed star, which is a very rare kind of configuration. I have that in another slide. Back then, when and all the currents, 3 of the current transiting star points are hitting her chart really, really strongly right now. You know, the Mars, Leo star point we just had was 20 Leo. And the one 4 years ago before that was 21 Leo. So her Mars was there. And I thought, well, her Mars in Leo and Trump's Mars in Leo, I think she could debate him. I think she could definitely hold her own in a debate with him. And so hopefully we are going to be having a chance to see that. Another very intriguing thing about her chart, being the first woman vice president and possibly the first woman president, is that Pallas Athena is at 13 Sag in her chart, and the Sibley ascendant, the USA Sibley ascendant, is right there, 12 to 13 degrees of Sagittarius. They're also on the south node of Venus and Uranus. So it's tied into this whole Gemini star point and Uranian nodes kind of theme that we've been talking about too. So again, right person, right for the right time. I already said that. That's a little bit about the great attractor. I just got that off the web. I don't know too much about it, but it's there for whatever it's worth. Final thoughts. The pre-election hype on either side is heightened by the current configuration, more dramatically this year than in normal election cycles. So all the changes in direction, which way the wind is blowing one day, and will it be true the next? We have to question that. And I do think that the star clock pointing directly at the nodes of Uranus and Venus this year means something significant. Could well be. And with this mutable cross coming into play, could even be more. So all the players, as we've seen, have a strong connection to the VSP of the year or to the pentagram, the whole pentagram of the time period. So they all have a role to play. And really, a president is not the almighty, but people expect them to be. And so, yes, there's a euphoric feeling right now. Everybody is about the recent change of events. But, where's it going to be next week, next month, next year? Give people a chance to put policies in place and to see, what they actually have to deal with. And, there's a lot going on in the world that any president is going to have to deal with right now. And hopefully, and we're not really talking about 25 and 26, but I'm sure we will be in the future, that the Neptune-Saturn conjunction is going to hit. They're going to both cross 0 Aries from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries in the coming year to 2, and that is a huge change for the world. I mean, 0 Aries, we're crossing from 29 Pisces to 0 Aries. I've been calling that from Alpha to Omega, like completely all the way around. And we don't know what's in store for us. Things are going to look so different. It would really be comforting to know that somebody, our leaders, that are people we can trust, who are at the helm to take us into this new world, instead of people who don't really know what they're doing. So, that's another point of view here. And I want to thank you very much for your attention. These are my books and all kinds of star point information available on YouTube and in my books and my courses. I don't have, like Maurice, I don't have too many things coming up, but I do have, what do I have? Oh, I will be teaching at Kepler College in the winter semester on an advanced program of astrocartography and astromapping. So if you're interested in that, check them out. And next week, in a few days, I'm going to England, and I will be traveling around southern England for about a week to 10, well, about 10 to 12 days. So if you're in the vicinity, let me know. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Arielle. This was very enlightening. I wonder, I personally do have a question.
Okay.
Recently, the Venus star point of in Gemini was 14 degrees Gemini.
Yeah.
And just as Jupiter moved on that degree, we had the exchange of prisoners between Russia and the United States. So this kind of unexpected, massive diplomatic effort resulting in about 20 plus people getting out of jail. And, through dialogue, Gemini, international diplomacy, Gemini, Jupiter. So I wonder what your thoughts are specifically about Mars crossing that degree soon. I know you touched on that, but just to add to it, maybe.
Well, just to respond to the Venus, to the Jupiter, to the Venus star, as I said, I can't look at this cross as all negative or all trouble. We have Venus in it, we have Jupiter in it, we have the Venus star point in it. There's got to be some good things that are coming up for us. I think a lot of us agree that the prisoner exchange was a wonderful thing, and maybe there's more yet. There's always people complaining it wasn't enough, but people can't just accept, like, okay, we got this now, let's be thankful for that. We'll get more later, we're going to keep working on it. Yeah, Mars stirs up trouble. As I said, Jim Lewis called it the Mars Jupiter called the Holy War kind of thing. And pinpointed places, demonstrated that places all over the world that had that Mars Jupiter landing on it, eruptions like that would break out. So yeah, and remember also I was pointing to the traveling Mars North Node in Gemini with the Uranus North Node in Gemini. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've been together traveling through Gemini. So there has been a lot of crazies happening. There's a lot of little, outbreaks of things happening here and there. I know the Middle East is still a hotbed. The Ukraine and Russia isn't resolved. As far as Mars and Gemini, yeah, with Jupiter and with Saturn and with everything, everybody's going to try as they will to hold their ground. But I wanted to comment, and I'll get your opinion, both of you, about mutable squares compared to cardinal and fixed squares. Mutable is so changeable that I don't feel, this is my opinion anyway, I don't feel that mutable squares hold like the other ones will. Like if we were having fixed squares right now, this is a long-term kind of situation that could be quite troublesome. Cardinal, has a lot of power and strength. Does it have lasting power? We don't know. But mutable, it's like the wind blows and something else happens, or it starts to collapse a little bit. So we'll see. Mars is not going to be in Gemini forever. It's going to move, fairly quickly out of there. Venus will move out of there.
Yeah. No,
as I said, even the Jupiter-Saturn square comes into cardinal, and at the end, it doesn't stay immutable. So the story isn't, I don't think we can make final conclusions about it. But anyway.
Thank you. Amazing. And
yeah.
Just, a side note, just to complete what you just said, I'm going to share here an anecdote. These are the astrocartography for Mars, Jupiter.
Okay.
And we see that it's crossing Tehran. It's crossing Iran on the IC. So everything that is bubbling up, between Iran and Israel
Yep.
can definitely develop around the middle of August to the end of August. And then the other
Yeah.
side, on the MC, it lands on the east coast of the United States around Los Angeles.
West Coast.
Excuse me, yeah, West Coast, Los Angeles. So,
Fire.
indeed. And if we
California is
look,
battling this time of year usually, but I think more fires.
and this is the global map where we see, you can draw that from a software anywhere really on SolarFire or online, and you just track the Jupiter Saturn or the Jupiter Mars line to see what area are more immediately involved in this.
Yeah, thank you for including that because I wanted to include that when I was mentioning it and I thought about it and I thought, I've got too many slides already for the time I've got to talk. So I think I'm not going to go down that road another
Okay.
time.
Now, a quick question. I don't know. I've activated the captions, and I wonder if they show for everyone or just for me, and if that's helpful at all.
I don't see them.
Okay.
The captions are for the languages that are included in Zoom.
Okay, so they show
Spanish,
some
Italian, I
people.
think there's, yeah.
So just to ask the
You have
audience,
to turn
do you
something
need
on.
the
Oh, show
captions or not?
captions. You can show. Yeah, they're showing if you turn them on. There's a little button at the bottom that says turn on
Okay.
captions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arielle. And now,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Can't wait to hear what
Aries.
Angela has to say.
Aries comes last but not least.
Ready.
Thank you, Angela from Greece.
I
And
thank you for organizing this webinar and giving us the opportunity to be together and discuss about all the things that we talked about when you were here. So I will go through a different way. I will end up there, the same point. But before I start, I just wanted to say there is no politics in what we're saying or what I am saying. It's just astrology. So I don't want anyone, because I'm going to mention a few news that has to do anything with political opinions or whatever. Whatever we know, this is what just we give. So I'm going to start with the fixed cross, and I'm going to do a cycle to connect something very important that brings us to now. So there is a question and understanding which happened in the mid of July, and realizing the monster we have created. This could be in a political way, or it could be in a very personal way, and seeing all the monsters inside us, around us, in our lives. And of course, I'm talking about the Mars-Uranus cycle, this conjunction, which happens every 2 years. And this is a point in our natal chart or in the chart in general. Of course, it shows us where is the point, the source of our revolutionary energy, the source and the way that we want to change things. But of course, it also shows us where there is not a stability and we feel very restless or insecure. Now, I mention this because the degree that happened this year, is extremely important. Is right on Algol, which is a star which is considered to be very evil, and it is in the constellation of Perseus. I don't like seeing things as evil. I try to find other ways and explanations about it to see in another way. But this star is linked, of course, to Medusa, which is this priestess that was in Athena's priestess. And I find it a bit unfair as a myth and what happened to that girl, to that priestess, but it directs us somewhere. So the myth goes that Athena was very angry because she was flirting in the temple, the holy temple, with Neptune, with Poseidon, or in other versions, it was Poseidon who actually either harassed her or raped her. It doesn't matter. The thing is that Athena turned her into a very ugly creature with hair that are from snakes. And the curse, of course, for that girl is that whoever was looking at her, men, were becoming like stone, like freezing. So what's behind all this, and what do we take out of that myth, and especially for that degree and that cycle that is happening right now?
Just a note, Angela.
Yep.
We're only seeing your first slide and the other slides on the side. I don't know if you have a full screen on, because we don't see the full screen.
You don't see anything?
No, we see the PowerPoint.
Sorry.
Not in full screen.
Okay, sorry, hold on to see what I can do. So it's probably, so that's it. You don't see it?
Just a moment. I mean, we see a chart now, Mars-Uranus chart.
Now it's the chart.
Yeah.
It's okay? You see the chart?
But it's not in full screen.
It's not. Okay. Let me new share. Okay.
It's in slide view. You should.
And now too.
Okay, great. Now it's working.
So the thing that gives us right here is that the two planets trigger actually Mars and Uranus. What they trigger is the tendency to adopt like extreme tactics and hasty movement, right? But it also brings in the surface from the sign of Taurus the need and the desire for improvement, for stability, or there is also competition. In generally, Uranus awakens and Mars wants to act and wants to act immediately. But in the sign of Taurus, of course, it prefers for the things to stay the same. So when Medusa comes here, and what freezes us and what makes us being like stable and not be able to move, this is what comes now, and this is what we have realized. And Pallas, which is the help, of course, to Perseus in order to cut the head of this monster, now is in Scorpio, which in this placement wears this helmet, the invisible helmet. You don't see her. It works as an assistant, but you can't see what's going on. So before I explain everything here, I want to go back to the point where everything started and what brings with it. So that was on November 18, when Sun met Mars. That was a new cycle. It was in Scorpio. And it was right before, next day, Pallas entered the sign of Scorpio, still is. It has gone back to Sagittarius, returned to Scorpio. It's going to stay until the beginning of September. So we have talked about it with Maurice a few years ago. What is this energy of Sun and Mars starting? This is where we are all focusing on doing something, putting ourselves in, be very decisive, but also very aggressive. So where the sign that focuses in is what is going to happen in the next 2 years, when we are going to give all our energy for good and for bad things. So in 2019, it was in Virgo, and then we have the pandemic. In 2021, and this was the video we did together, Maurice, it was in Libra. And so this was the first time that we had this enemies. It has to do with balancing, working together, or you are my enemy. But before it's in cardinal signs, it was in cardinal signs, everything was very clear. You know who's your enemy, you show your intentions, you know who's against you and to whom you are against. But this was the time when we first had the war between Ukraine and Russia. I'm not going to say make any different descriptions about it, but this is when the war actually started. And there we had a clear image, view, and perspective on what was going on. But on November 2023, and of course the cycles, might start a little bit earlier. That was in Scorpio, and a moon Pluto and Pallas square with Pluto. We had this horrible event, of course, with Israel, and this is what smells like death. But the thing is that with Pallas working there, everything has to do with not understanding, not knowing the intentions, who's your friend, who's your enemy, what are the deals, and everything is happening behind the scenes. And Arielle said that with the behind the scenes. There are a lot of things happening without knowing what's going on. So there we have this union of great powers that they're working together, but they don't want to say it. Also, we have the fear of losing power. We mentioned about corruption, we mentioned about death. And think about the first time fighting, having a war in tunnels that's under the earth. It is hidden. This is the first time that we had something like this, so intense. So when it comes now to this Algol and Medusa, which has to do with decapitating, cutting the head. It's a bit scary because when it happened, I said, oh my God, I hope we don't have anything like this. But the head is also who is in charge. So following that cycle, we had events of elimination because, of course, this goal has to do with Medusa, has to do with eliminating something very quickly and cutting the head and cutting the one from who is in charge. So that is in a social way. In a very personal way, think about yourself as you have started with the best of intentions. In your relationships, in your work, you have started doing something because you wanted to be admired, you wanted to succeed, you wanted your relationship to last, you wanted your family to succeed. But in all this situation that you are involved, are you really frozen? Are you trapped? Are you able to escape, to leave from this point that you find yourself? So is this a monster that we have created in our lives? And so we are trapped in this cycle. So coming back to November, so with the eclipses, of course, that we have back there, I'm going to show you something. What actually happened from there until now, it's like opening a fan, a hand fan. So it evolved, and now it has opened the wind, opened the idea, you know exactly what's going on, you have realized it in your life. Of course, all of this in the things that also came up very intensively has to do with economic systems. We have inflation, we have the goods are very expensive. People are struggling to survive. We know that we had the stock market now that actually there was a very low, the prices. And of course, we need this energy that to gather it and be very strong in order to make things better. Uranus is unpredicted. So with the opposition, of course, to Pallas, Pallas can also be very unpredictable, not very good in this placement when it comes to social matters, because it gives this power to, no, they're fighting for power, which is against us in reality. But when it comes to personal help and assistance, the truth is that it can take us to the underworld, to our underworld, and see what's going on and realize our fears and cut that head, which of course freezes us and does not allow us to move. Also, this is the place and this is the time, all these months. I don't know if you feel that you need to change, that you feel that you're very stuck, but you don't know how, and you don't want to touch this sensible part of your life. But it pushes you towards this direction, so it's not something that you can avoid. This is a word that you probably don't like. You see it, right? Chaos. So when it comes to this word and to this situation of chaos, you come in your mind comes, of course, Neptune, which is in the final degree of Pisces. And I think at this point, Neptune is the most powerful player in the planetary system astrologically. But also it has someone that helps and assists Neptune. And this, of course, is Saturn, the same sign, that is trying to fix a lot of things that both of them will meet at first degree of 0 degree of Aries. That's the absolute beginning. So we have a lot of things finishing right now. We are in that process, in that direction. But before this happens, of course, there's a lot of pain and a lot of people are angry. We are all angry, and we are in a restless situation. So, as I said, we have last year the Sun-Mars cycle, which was activated by the Mars-Uranus in Taurus. And now we have the full moon of Aquarius simultaneously the same period, which is, of course, the Jupiter-Saturn square. And here we have a grand cross, same degrees. Again, it's squaring this Algol, this Medusa, this elimination that we have to go through. And there is a great fear of losing more. And what do we lose? Is it our authority? Is it ourselves? Can we find ourselves? Can we find our own flame? Can we find our identity? Can we unite together? Because it's Aquarius, the moon. Aquarius is also there to unite us in a common direction and a purpose and sense, all together to see the common greater good. But in any way, death is there and awaits. And that death can be either literal or, of course, has to do with ourselves and our fears and phobias. Now, Jupiter-Saturn square, Maurice and Arielle have gone a lot through for this square, but I want to say something. When Jupiter entered in Gemini at the end of May, what happened was that it opened a release valve from 2020, when Jupiter entered Capricorn, and we had the two edges, which was Capricorn and Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn in Capricorn, and we had Uranus in Taurus, right? So everything was within a trine, and I'm talking about, of course, the planets that the slower moving planets. So everything was very intense, and the energy was very in a very small place. So it was gathering more. From the moment that Jupiter touched 0 degree and we had the trine with Pluto, this is the time that it started releasing more energy, as is the one that goes first and goes beyond and further. So it's in a fast motion to catch something, to do something, to change something. So it's a very fast motion, right? We have Pluto in 0 degree right now. We have it still, which is the point of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020, at the end of 2020. So this is how it opens. This is the first square. We have already talked about it, but I want to say a few things about this particular one. It's this square is in a mutable critical degree. That's the 17th degree. Jupiter is in Gemini, it's in detriment. Venus is in Virgo, is in fall. Saturn is in Pisces, is retrograde. Mercury is in Leo, which is the ruler of Gemini, Virgo, which is also retrograde. So having all this, is it very strong and unpredictable, or is it very weak? Can it do something? Can it do something right now? Or is it all words? Is it all like threats and fake news and saying things and spreading the fear? And that's the fixed cross that we were talking earlier, because it is involved right now. So can we see a change? Can we see things happening or not? What we can say about it, about this square, is, as Maurice and Arielle said, it's a lot about ideals and belief system and structure. It has to be open, the mutable cross. But according to what I have witnessed from other people, when they had it in their chart, actually they tend to be very subjective, dogmatic. Of course, they're fighting for their ideals and for what they believe, but their purpose in this life is to open up, be more open, and see other perspectives. But people tend to be more, focused on specific ideals, specific beliefs, and specific things that they have learned. It's like their structure is going to collapse if they will change. Also, from this square, we are going to see a lot of refugees. They're already talking about it. If the war happens, even if the war doesn't happen the way we think it will be, like the 2016, which is when the great waves of refugees started. Now they're expecting a new wave from people that want to leave. And this is happening through the sea. So Pisces and the water. So that's the way of leaving from the place that you feel trapped. As we speak about water, things have started to change also in terms of how much water there is. It's not raining, and they don't have the reservoirs of water, or reservoirs are starting to eliminate. And the next very important field that it's going to be occupying us a lot is about the water supplies and efficiency, and how much do we have. Speaking of water again, and as Gemini has to do a lot with trade, Greece has sent army ships after Suez, this is a passage and close to Yemen, because there are some attacks to the ships that pass with petroleum and trade goods. So you see that is also a problem or an obstacle that is used for various reasons to attack, to create problems. So we see that this passage from Suez has started to be limited. So if things are going to escalate, this thing there with the trade and the ships also is going to escalate, which brings more expensive goods. And of course, the trade is what keeps the world and the wheel moving. Another thing, okay, you know that Gemini and Jupiter has to do a lot with traveling, and due to climate change that we see with all the Taurus energy and all the problems that they have created, even though a lot of people don't believe it, there is a new trend that has to do with culcation, which is moving summer vacation to other destinations that nobody expected to have them during summertime. And I'm talking about northern countries like Denmark, Holland, UK. So people start thinking about, instead of going to the beaches in the summer, traveling to other places where it's more relaxed, more easy to be there and have fun. Also, I would like to say that whatever, due to Pallas in Scorpio and all this Plutonian theme, the attacks are not necessarily direct. So a lot of people in personal lives or politically or socially or in this world, they're working more peripherally, meaning using others to do the job. And so it's like a representative. To me, I'm not there to show my face or who I am. Of course, we can see a rise again of cyber attacks. Cyber attacks has to do with, with government sites and important sites and sites that information is there, has to be kept really, really carefully. But we could see that there will be an increase of attempt to attack into this very sensible information. But of course, a Jupiter-Saturn square in this cross is not necessarily something bad, because it can bring new ideas, new techniques that we can use. We can adapt it in our daily life, in our work. We can make we can find new ways of using it and making it more fun for ourselves. Like the time that we use, whatever we do has to be more pleasant. And this is what we are seeking right now. Also, it's a very good idea to be open to new perspectives, because the more open we are, the more opportunities are there in order to get ideas or to have chances, to have an opportunity to get a chance. Also, there are feelings of excitement and unrest, and most of all because of the Saturn, which it's going to work more at the end of the year when it's going to be direct, but now it's a retrograde. Fear for the unknown and losing control. I've heard that a lot from people saying that I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm afraid that something will change, that I don't know what it is, and I won't have the control. So letting it go, it's not an easy step to do. So let me go it's not moving again. Have it stuck? Okay, there we go. That's a bit for your information, just to see things that happened in the previous, the 3 previous cycles, because there was a big gap of this cycle in the signs of Gemini and Pisces. So you can see that there are advancements and progress, but also there are these conflicts that come from nations or for the people alone. So did we say that it's information? So in the previous cycle of 1846, Associated Press was founded, and that was in order to cover more easily the Mexican-American War that was happening at the same exact period. We also had the Irish potato famine, which led to mass immigration. Of course, they all left for the United States, and it influenced European Revolution of 1848. In this specific situation, there was an inflation that happened for the potato. It was a problem. So we have Pisces that created, there was a fungus, I think, that destroyed all the potato soil. But using the trade, the British states, instead of helping the Irish, what they did was, as it was said, what they did is they continued to the trade and the exportation, exporting the goods instead of allowing people to eat. In 1905 and 06, we had a triple square. This is how it goes, from a single to a triple, single to a triple. So since there are three, there are more things happening. We had the Russian Revolution. We had Albert Einstein, who finishes his scientific paper detailing his quantum theory of light, and also introduces his theory of special relativity. We had the first SOS signal, the Morse, which was adapted, and it was originally established for maritime use. So see again. Willis Carrier received the US patent for the world's first air condition. That's Gemini. We had the first cartoon movie. That's also Gemini and fun. Wright brothers are granted a patent for their flying machine. Again, we have this Gemini, and opening the wings, which is the flying, how flying history actually started. It was under this square cycle. Also, it was the first time at that period that the American president was able to travel abroad USA while being a president, and the trip was to Puerto Rico, and he went through with a ship. I think it was Roosevelt, who also got his Nobel Prize for Peace, Nobel Prize. And also there was another Nobel Prize for the nervous system. The nervous system, Gemini, this is when it started evolving again and being able to concentrate a lot on the nervous system and knowing it. On July the 6th of 1965, and that was right after the year after the birth of Kamala Harris, it was a single square Gemini Pisces, 17 degree, same degree as now. And it was when Johnson enacted the Higher Education Acts, which Science Bill ending ethnic restriction. It was the Voting Rights Act and the Medicaid Act. I think it was the first time that people who were poor were allowed to have some medical care, which was for free. I'm not sure, because I don't know the American history very well. Back then in 1965, we also have the Pluto Uranus in Virgo, so it was a Grand Cross again, or a T square. It was a T square. Yeah, T square. I'm not sure that. I think it escalated with the Vietnam War. Some of you might know the history. I'm not so sure, but this was the time I think that it escalated more with Vietnam. And now for 2024-25, it's going to be a triple Gemini, Pisces, and Cancer Aries first degree. And do you see what I have written here? Drones. This is what I'm afraid the most. This is the new technology that's evolving.
We don't see
rapid.
The change. Oh, yeah, drones.
Here, drones. Okay. This scares me to hell. I don't know why, but the drones really scare me a lot. And we will see a lot of expanding the use of it more drones or use in more ways, I can say. I don't know, but the drones are really used right now, and it's what we should be afraid of. In personal use, I don't know, I am afraid of the drones. Sorry for that. So that's it. I think I have covered everything that I wanted to cover. Okay, with the full moon right now, I could say, since Pallas Athena is involved, it's the right time to draw a new direction and a new strategy. I know.
What would you say, Angela, what would you say is a key word for Pallas Athena? If people
in
wanted
this
to
position here, in this position here. Okay. Pallas Athena is a warrior. It's the force that pushes us to fight for something that we cannot do it in a direct way. If I am a person who doesn't want to be aggressive, Pallas is the one that helps me find other ways to maintain my situation, or to be a winner, or to be in front without being aggressive. I have to say that again. It gives us strategies. It gives us ways that we can show ourselves, show what we can do, and show our strength. Be there very powerfully.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here we have new direction and new strategies, and of course, fighting our fears and taking the head of it.
Yes, that was very extensive and well researched. Wow, a lot of details to process and a very rich presentation. I want to briefly, as we close, I would like to recapture some of what you, Angela, and Arielle brought up. Arielle emphasized the fact that the mutable cross can bring a crisis that is more fleeting. So that is something to remember, is that there could be peaks and lows, but they're more regional, or they're more temporary and perhaps not as long lasting. What is interesting that Angela brought about the travel routes and the trade in the Suez Canal and the boat, all the funneling of goods from Asia to Europe through the canal can definitely be affected, because travel routes is Gemini Sag. And here, we can see that being upset or being targeted. And the ocean, of course, maritime forces with Saturn involved. Now, always remember that when we talk a lot about about Jupiter, Mars, but we also have a Mars-Saturn square, and Mars-Saturn combination often bring a military dimension, a military expression. And so we see that Mars-Saturn, the military component, can definitely be about travel, routes, trade, embargoes, blocking routes, and, difficulty moving around in this region. And of course, then Venus is involved, which has to do, Venus in Virgo has to do with employment, with salaries, and with the price of goods. So a Venus-Saturn opposition can bring a contraction. If we speak about the stock market going through its own manic and then depressive state, it's definitely involving the Venus aspect on the second half of August. employment issues, financial contraction during the time that Venus moves through those degrees. And then it's also a time where there could be a lot of scrutiny about the way money is used. You know, is money used ethically? You know, will there be some kind of financial scandal because of misappropriation of funds? So employment and financial dealings can and trade can definitely be affected during this time. Many people here, you know, are very concerned about, and all of us, you know, are concerned about the situation in the Middle East and the Ukraine. And, you know, I just pulled the chart of Israel, and we see that the full moon at 27 Leo Aquarius is going to land on the Mars of Israel, along with Uranus. And so if there is any escalation, it's likely to happen towards the end of the month. Then this is the chart of the modern Iran. That is a very mutable chart. You know, there's a lot of Pisces, Virgo, Sag, and a Gemini moon. So we see that this Mars in Gemini that has been on the moon and that is, you know, has square Saturn, is when, you know, the assassination happened on Iranian soil of the Palestinian leader, Haniyeh. But we see how Mars is going to square the nodes at that time. And, you know, and possibly lead to a diplomatic crisis or, you know, a war. Now, to what extent, you know, I go back to what Arielle was saying, that it may be short-lived, that it may not necessarily have to do with, you know, something that affects everyone. However, remember, one of the statements of mutability is that it spreads quickly. And so it's hard to contain. It's not so focused. And so if something begins during a mutable phase, it does, you know, ping pong and echo chambers around the world. And, you know, it could affect the trade routes. It could affect changes in the commerce and prices of goods being affected. Now, again, you know, we want to understand how astrology is both for us a tool to understand what's going on, to track, to maybe prevent what's going on, you know, prevent extreme crisis. So we are witnesses here. You know, our leaders are not necessarily listening to us to understand that there are consequences. However, it is important to understand that no configuration has to be only negative or only positive. I think the important thing to retain, again, feeding on all of our words, is to be careful not to take anything right now for granted, because it's changeable. Because, you know, like Arielle was saying, and I'm showing here another example, there's euphoria in Bangladesh after the leader left the country. So this Mars Jupiter, you know, euphoria, this high, this peak, and then the contraction follows. And what we thought was amazing is suddenly in doubt. So, be ready for this kind of ups and downs, and don't get caught in the immediate drama. Take a step back. Think before you speak, think before you react emotionally. And most importantly, if we use the power of words, we keep repeating how this Gemini can be destructive because of misinformation or trade routes, but we can use it positively. If we use this Mars Jupiter to bring positive words, to bring wisdom, to bring understanding, Gemini at its core is about diversity. It's about listening to one another. It's about cooperation. It is about new alliances. So, as we can easily understand how and warn about worst case scenarios, there is also a force of good that we can rally, for this particular alignment. And it is about, I would say, opening, what Angela was saying, opening our brain, opening our minds, considering things that we thought were against us. Listening instead of talking. So I'm glad we're cooperating here and we're sharing ideas and opening our minds to different points of view. And, in the spirit of positivity, first of all, we pray for peace. We pray for higher understanding. We pray for dialogue, even when we don't agree with each other. Because that's the power of Gemini. Let's talk about it. Let's clear the air. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And safe travels to Arielle. And no drones for Angela.
Greece has got so many drones flying around right now. It's crazy.
All the best.
Thank you, Maurice, for putting
Thank
this
you.
all together. It was wonderful. Really great information. Thank you.
I think so. It's very rich.